Now, nearly 3 weeks into this war of choice by Vladimir Putin, we see the horrors of his brutality, even against civilians. We also know that with America run by a hologram president with a hobbled economy, chaos reigns and our enemies are emboldened. The world is changing rapidly, and what happens next, it's not easy to predict. Still, there are signs that a peace deal may be within reach.
Look at what's being discussed, because at the moment, the Russians seem ready to accept Ukraine as neutral, not in NATO, but on the model of Sweden or Austria, potentially in the European Union, and letting outside powers that would certainly, I think, include the United States, provide guarantees of Ukraine's security. So if you listen to what they're actually talking about with their Ukrainian counterparts and ignore some of the more steamy rhetoric, the Russian position is shifting.
And Zelensky is shifting as well by being realistic on NATO membership.
We have heard for many years about the open doors, but we also heard that we can't enter those doors. And this is truth, and we have simply to accept it as it is.
Now, there's clearly a deal here for the making. Yet, do any of you feel, watching TV or reading online, any urgency for peace, actual peace? Now, of course, Putin could just decide to stop the shelling right now, but he's not going to do that unless he gets something for it. And President Xi, in one call to Vladimir Putin, could end these hostilities. Hey, Vlad, no more wheat purchases, no more oil buys, Tavarish, until you stop the killing. But Xi's not going to do that. Now, right now, he has Western Europe and America all tied up in knots, blowing billions of dollars trying to help Ukraine after the fact, then leaving more discounted Russian oil for China. And who else is acting as an impediment to peace while we're at this conversation? Well, people who don't seem particularly bothered by the prospect of the war dragging on, well, mostly for political reasons. That's what we're talking about. Well, the principal parties are clearly trying to get to yes, we've already discovered that, but the Biden administration never seems to sound hopeful.
We have not seen any concrete indication from President Putin that he is serious about diplomacy, that he is serious about putting an end to the violence, and much to the contrary.
And today, Biden didn't talk off-ramps or a lot about peace, but it was all about punishment.
And together with our allies and partners, we will keep up the pressure on Putin's crumbling economy, isolating him on the global stage. That's our goal. Make Putin pay the price.
Well, that's a nice applause line, but as we know, sanctions rarely work. And then there's Michael McFaul, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia under Obama. Now, he thinks Zelensky, not our own elected officials, should dictate our Ukraine policy.
What about listening to him rather than we pretend that we know what he needs? What about if he thinks he needs these weapons? Why don't we listen to him? And when we say, oh, they'll be shut down, oh, he doesn't have airports to put those MiGs in. What about listening to his judgment to help him fight the war that he, after all, is the one fighting the war?
It's his country. So, of course, it's his job to fight for it. What is he talking about? Plus, is McFaul aware that Congress hasn't voted on an actual declaration of war? Or the fact that there's scant public support for us to get into a shooting war with Russia? Does that matter at all to him? Now, maybe McFaul has Bidenitis and actually thinks Zelensky is our Secretary of State or our Vice President. And let's not forget what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has said. When he urged peace, well, he didn't urge peace. That's a trick question. He's too busy playing the fanboy role.
In one sense, his speech was reminiscent of the stirring feeling all of us had in the aftermath of 9/11. Equal parts resolve and unity and determination to save democracy from an hour of darkness.
Now, invoking 9/11 here is simply obscene. He sounds like he's repping Zelensky, not his constituents. Those words, by the way, don't calm things down. They ramp things up. Do we want Putin to really believe that a la 9/11 we're digging in for the long deployment of U.S. forces? And just as reckless is Trump-hating, soon-to-be former Congressman Adam Kinzinger.
And I personally think we need to do a no-fly zone. I think we've gotten to the point, though, where there is significant risk in inaction.
Now, when Zelensky calls for a no-fly zone, it's totally understandable. I don't blame him one bit. When Kinzinger does it, it's highly irresponsible. Rather than doing what's in our national interest, which is avoiding a war with Russia, he just stokes further tensions. Oh, and you didn't think I'd forget Mitt Romney, did you?
Enough talk. People are dying. Send them the planes that they need. They want MiGs. Get them the MiGs.
Why don't you pay for them? Now, did he ever stop to think that more people could die if we send Ukraine MiGs? And I'm not talking about Russians. And last but not least, Lindsey Graham.
Do you still stand by your call to have Putin be assassinated? Do you still stand by your call?
Yeah, I hope he'll be taken out one way or the other. I don't care how they take him out. I don't care if we send him to The Hague and try him. I just want him to go, yes. If John McCain were here, he'd be saying the same thing.
Well, we all want Putin gone, no doubt about it. And regarding John McCain, God rest his soul, but McCain's also the guy who saved Obamacare, wanted us mired in Syria, and never wanted us out of Afghanistan. Graham's comments don't ratchet down tension again. They stoke tension. The last thing we need is Putin even more paranoid than he already is. If he thinks he'll die or rot in prison, Putin may just say, forget negotiations, let it rip. So poo-pooing negotiations, threatening Putin, that's the easy stuff. And it's satisfying at the moment, I get it, but it doesn't accomplish much. No one should be cynically thinking that an extended conflict in Ukraine is good for him or her politically either. I hope they're not thinking that. Because history shows that the longer a war lasts, the more costly it is, by the way, to all involved. U.S. policymakers have to be very careful to make sure we do not end up in a worse position when this is all over. And prolonging this by dismissing any chance of peace or downplaying it will only ensure that more innocent people are slaughtered. A lot of the same people who are promising sure victory in Ukraine if Zelensky just gets those MiGs or surface-to-air missiles were the same ones promising the same in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we know how that all worked out for us. We all know that both Putin and President Xi are ruthless and determined. They must be resisted in a manner and in a time that will be effective and meaningful. Reagan won the Cold War by rebuilding our economy and growing our military, which took a few years after the devastation we faced under Carter. The same pattern will have to play out here. Now, as the Angle has said from the beginning, the situation in Ukraine is a horrific tragedy. It breaks all of our hearts. But we have to be prudent and we have to be thoughtful in our response. And right now, the U.S. is simply in no good position to engage in another protracted military struggle. We need time to repair our economy, reform our military, and get political leadership that actually works, is good, is smart. Whatever happens, we cannot repeat the same mistakes we made after 9/11. And that's the Angle.